Right now, at this very moment, the Ukrainian Armed Forces are doing something truly incredible. Pokrovsk has buried Putin's army. The Russian offensive has drowned in their own blood. Ukrainians are standing like a wall and are already moving forward. All that's left of the world's second army are clowns and sheep. A tank Armageddon in Russia. Putin's armor has crumbled to dust. A real catastrophe is tearing Russia apart. Urals is in turmoil. Mass layoffs, production has come to a halt. You need to see this footage. Watch until the end. A strike by the Ukrainian Armed Forces at the very heart of Russia. Refineries are on fire, there's no gasoline, prices have skyrocketed. The Kremlin is losing control. Russia's energy collapse has already begun. The Kremlin has admitted something terrible and Ukrainian drones continue to attack. Italy is secretly fighting for Ukraine. All aid is classified as top secret. But that doesn't mean Kyiv has been left alone to face the aggressor. The Italians are operating in the shadows and will tell you how they're helping Ukraine fight for victory. Sensational, new Ukrainian drones and secret developments are shaking up the front. Super speed, precision, destruction. Ukraine's defense industry is breaking through the enemy's defenses. Drones, domestically produced Mavics, and secret innovations. The enemy is in shock. The Balkans are challenging the aggressor. Military aid is rushing to the front. Ukraine's secret allies. Who is helping from the shadows? Is changing the course of the war? All this and more in our program, Hotspot. The front is on fire. A catastrophe for the occupiers on the front line. The war is reaching a new level of panic for Russia. Everything is being decided here and now. The pace of the offensive has slowed. Near Pokrovsk, the enemy drowned in their own blood. The world's second army, clowns and sheep. Fiery details from the front lines. Watch right now.
The Russian army is loosening its grip. The offensive of the occupying forces in the Pokrovsk direction has slowed down somewhat. This is stated in the latest report from the Institute for the Study of War. However, analysts emphasize that this situation is temporary. Right now, the enemy is actively transferring reserves and concentrating forces on this section of the front. And very soon, assaults and attacks may resume with renewed force.
At least somewhere. Up to half of the enemy's main forces are concentrated right here, the enemy's efforts. Even though it is no less difficult in other directions. In
recent days, the Russians have also made gains in the area of Mirnohrad, east of Pokrovsk. Russian military bloggers are talking about the capture of western Rovne and most of Krasny Lyman. There is evidence that the Russians are breaking through, advancing toward the Pokrovsk-Dobropilya highway in eastern Pokrovsk. However, our defenders are holding their positions.
The balance of forces is changing because the enemy is being crushed there. Overall, the main task of Ukraine's defense forces is to inflict maximum damage on the armies advancing toward Pokrovsk.
According to some military observers, part of the Pokrovsk area has become a so-called gray zone, with control shifting back and forth.
It's more like a vinaigrette, if you will. Here it's red, here it's black, here it's white. And the situation there changes every hour. But the trend remains the same. When the forces of the Second Army approached, they were unable to advance into the city from the south and southwest. They waited for the 51st Army to encircle the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration from the north. But then the 51st Army decided to bite off more than it could chew.
So now the occupiers are not trying to gain a foothold in Pokrovsk itself. The enemy wants to break through the city to its northern outskirts. Serhiy Okishev, 7th Rapid Response Corps of the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces. Russian troops are somewhat slowing down their offensive operations in the Pokrovsk direction, waiting for reinforcements and trying to establish defenses and expand logistics to southern Pokrovsk. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, there have been at least 73 Russian assaults in the Pokrovsk direction over the past day. At this very moment, fighting is taking place near Vladimirovka, Fedorovka, Nekonorovka, Krasny Liman, Orekovo, and Filial. Unable to boast of any other achievements, the soldiers of the Kremlin's army resort to their favorite tactic, terror. For example, Russian drone operators have repeatedly tried to destroy the Ukrainian flag in Kramatorsk. In other words, to spite the Ukrainian Armed Forces in any way they can. But our flag turned out to be much quicker than yet another Russian drone operator. As a result, the frustrated occupier, having missed, simply crashed his FPV drone into the ground. His FPV. After watching videos like this, you can't help but wonder what kind of idiots are working there. The answer, just the usual kind.
He doesn't want to go at all. He's stuffed himself.
Following horses and donkeys, the occupiers are now actively enlisting sheep and rams into their ranks. It's worth noting that the Russian Ministry of Defense at least gives animals bulletproof vests, which for many contract soldiers is an unaffordable luxury. However, even so, the animals, unlike the Russians, refuse to willingly go to slaughter.
Come on, go. They're waiting for you there. All right, go on, slowly now. Come on. A combat unit.
The Russian army is so short on soldiers that they're putting not only sheep under arms, but circus performers too. And
I had it all carefully planned out so that I was, at first, originally an acrobat performing in the circus, but after experiencing some very bad and unfortunate falls, I ended my career as an acrobat and was eventually mobilized.
the disabled man turned out to be of no use to anyone at the circus, but he was perfect for the local assaults. By the way, the acrobat was given a partner and a command to match.
It turns out that there was me, an acrobat, a teacher of life safety and knowledge society, altar boy and car mechanic, and that's the kind of team we probably lived with.
And all of this, according to Putin, is the world's second strongest army. Although what is there to be surprised about with circus performers and sheep at the front when even Russian generals treat their own soldiers like cattle, selling and trading them literally by weight?
You see, the Ministry of Defense recruits people, gives them dog tags and weapons, and then it turns out that they don't exist. So selling them, what's the problem? They never existed and still don't.
On the Zaporizhzhia front, commanders openly sell their refuseniks into forced labor to collaborators. Instead of officially processing refusals or sending those unwilling to participate in local assaults to disciplinary units, they are listed as missing, detained, and handed over for unpaid forced labor throughout the Zaporizhzhia region. For this, commanders receive considerable sums of money from the collaborators. Such Russian refuseniks are now being found en masse at factories and construction sites in Melitopol and Berdyansk.
They're not even cannon fodder. They're not even serfs. They're just, I don't know, like people selling chicks at the market. And even then, honestly, people tend to feel more sympathy for the chicks.
Shock, Putin's tank army is falling apart at the seams. Colossal losses. More than 11,000 tanks are already resting in the scrap metal graveyard. The Kremlin is drowning in despair. Even the once advanced Ural Vagon Zavod is sinking into chaos and layoffs. Production is collapsing, assembly lines are coming to a halt. Russia's tank potential has evaporated, as if it never existed at all. We will show how the legend of Putin's great armored vehicles has collapsed. Watch until the end.
We must not only keep pace with the global economy, but strive to outpace its dynamics by unlocking our own potential.
But in Russia, there is neither dynamism nor potential to be seen. In particular, even the most resilient are starting to go under. Such is the case with the Russian military giant Ural Vagon Zavod, which produces armored vehicles and enjoys all the privileges of the military-industrial complex, can't cope and...
The space is so full that it can barely hold anything else, with every corner packed tightly and no room left to spare. People and objects are squeezed together, making it difficult to move around. The pressure is so intense that it feels as if the walls might burst open at any moment, perfectly capturing the idea of being completely overwhelmed and bursting at the seams. According to the latest statistics, about 250,000 people have been working like this in Russia recently.
And even reducing shifts to a minimum no longer works. Layoffs are looming at the enterprise that is the flagship of Russian tank manufacturing. This was reported by the Russian publication E1. In some departments, up to 50% of the staff is planned to be cut. And on the scale of the entire enterprise, without work will be left every 10th employee.
Previously, it was kind of like this. Civilian production might not have been very profitable. But there was a lot of money for military production, and that somehow made up for it. But now it seems even spending on military products is being cut. And it seems that Ralvagon's profits from military contracts can't cover the losses in the civilian sector. That's why now they're going to lay off people in the civilian production sector, reportedly by about 10%.
Experts explain that the reason for all this is the dramatic decline of the Russian economy. Ukrainian strikes on oil refineries, which are depriving Russia of millions in petrodollars, Western sanctions, and increased pressure from the US on the Russian oil industry have already led to a situation where even the negative forecasts for the economy are too optimistic. It will get even worse.
Their negative forecast from the central bank, let me remind you, is a 2.5 to 3.5% drop in GDP, 12% inflation, and a 20% interest rate. In other words, they will have to raise the rate back up to 20% next year. And that's their negative forecast. A scenario that I don't consider negative, but rather what is actually happening right now. That's the thing. The accumulated problems are just coming up every single day. And they don't allow the central bank to maintain the scenario it considers manageable.
The situation has escalated to the point where the economic decline in Russia is now being publicly acknowledged.
Question. Is that enough? Is this what we wanted?
In fact, even according to official data, the recession has already affected 19 out of 24 sectors of the Russian economy. Moreover, they're even starting to have problems with defense industry enterprises. If these enterprises are already experiencing non-payments, not getting paid from the budget, and the work week is being reduced. Like, for example, Urals. This means their funding was cut, well, about 3 months ago. So these processes are really happening.
At the same time, the funniest thing is that in Russia they've already figured out how to present this information to the higher-ups. It's all in the spirit of negative growth and unsuccessful successes. So now, they're openly talking about the economic decline. At the same time, they add that there was such an unprecedented boom before, it simply couldn't last forever. So now we're seeing a decline.
That's their strategy. To say, no, there's no recession, no economic decline, and then release a statement that, yes, most likely there will be an economic downturn in the fourth quarter, and surround it all with a bunch of caveats.
The solution suggested itself once again to revise the draft budget, naturally in the direction of negative growth.
We are holding a whole series of meetings on the framework of the country's main financial document, its primary priority.
And as before, the priority remains the war. So analysts are not advising to expect any improvements. And if the cuts have already affected the industrial giants of the military-industrial complex, then all enterprises in the country, including private ones, are next in line.
A catastrophe for Russia's oil industry. The armed forces of Ukraine have set a record for strikes on oil refining facilities. The year 2025 has become a real hell for the Russian economy. Dozens of oil refineries are on fire. Drivers all over Russia are already feeling the consequences. There's almost no fuel and prices are sky high. Panic is growing, and this is just the beginning. Drone attacks are intensifying. It will only get louder and even more painful. You can find the details in our report.
The Ukrainian Armed Forces attacks on Russian oil refineries are setting new records in both range and frequency. We are striking at a self-appointed target. We are striking precisely at the legitimate target. Oil extraction and refining make up 90% of Russia's defense budget. These are dirty oil rubles, which the enemy uses to kill us. If we look at the statistics for September and October of this year, that's 20 facilities. Among them are 6 oil refineries and 2 oil terminals, 3 oil depots and 9 oil pumping stations. As of early November 2025, Ukraine had carried out 111 strikes on oil depots and refineries in Russia. For comparison, there were 94 such incidents in all of 2024. As a result, the Russian Federation is facing enormous problems with oil refining volumes, as well as shortages of fuel and gasoline on the domestic market. What did this lead to? This resulted in a 20% shortage of petroleum products on the domestic market and the idling of 37% of oil refining capacity, as well as fuel shortages in 57 regions of the Russian Federation and a ban on gasoline exports until the end of this year.
The Federal Highway M12, Moscow to Kazan. A toll road. There's only one gas station every 150 kilometers. At each gas station, there are lines of cars stretching 1.5 to 2 kilometers just to fill up. I'll show you what this looks like now, and when it will be refueled in winter is anyone's guess. I counted 130 cars ahead of us.
But it's not just about the quantity, it's also about the quality. The range of strikes on Russian oil refineries has almost doubled. If last year the farthest target was the Salavat refinery in Bashkortostan, about 1,300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, on October 6, 2025, Ukrainian drones reached the Tyumen refinery, more than 2,000 kilometers from Ukraine. According to calculations by journalists from the publication Vertka, the effectiveness of Ukrainian drone strikes is 85%. Out of 250 strikes since the start of the full-scale war, 213 have been successful. Many facilities, especially in southern Russia, are attacked repeatedly. For example, the Ryazan, Volgograd and Ilsky refineries have each been attacked 10 times. In order to somehow put this war into a stalemate, to shift it, it is necessary to learn not only to repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to suppress their logistics and their aviation. That's why it became necessary, and I'm not even mentioning the need to strike at enterprises of Russia's military-industrial complex and its energy system. During the course of the war, Ukraine first launched from scratch and then significantly ramped up the production of long-range and rocket drones. Russian oil refineries are being terrorized by UAVs such as Lyuty, Polyanitsia, Peklo and FP-1. Drones costing just a few $1,000s are causing damage to the Russian budget, amounting to hundreds of millions of dollars. Look guys, if you take a closer look, that's actually the 7th hit that's burning right now, just as we expected. Whoa, can you see it? That's the 7th drone that just arrived. At the same time, following the drones, Ukraine is also ramping up the production of long-range missiles. According to experts, if Ukraine uses cruise missiles like the Flamingo with a range of 3,000 kilometers and a 1,000 kilogram warhead, there will be nothing left of the Russian oil refineries.
If the strike hits the oil refinery, it will be impossible to restore that refinery. That is, it will be completely, if before it was possible to, when a drone hits, you can replace the damaged parts with spares in a few weeks or a month. But here, everything will be destroyed to the ground. The entire distillation column will be completely wiped out. And with just 2 pairs of such missiles, all that will remain of the refinery will be memories.
The trend is that there will be more and more strikes in the future. And gasoline and other fuels in Russia are becoming scarcer.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Sensational news. Italy is secretly helping Ukraine. All information about aid from this country is classified as top secret. But that doesn't mean the Italians have left Ukraine alone to face the aggressor. Details about how Italy is cooperating with our country are coming up in this exclusive report.
It's customary not to disclose this country's assistance, but that absolutely doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Italy is another partner of Ukraine, helping our country in the fight against the Russian occupiers. The country has significant experience in producing air defense systems and ammunition for them. Currently, a lot of attention is being paid to the prospects of joint production of these weapons in cooperation with our country.
It's important to understand that any European country that says we are ready to launch production facilities for manufacturing weapons is important to Ukraine. Because one way or another, the weapons produced by the European Union will end up in Ukraine. Because many people, not only in Ukraine, but also in Europe, in the European Union, after all, Ukraine is Europe, when modeling the situation, say that after Ukraine, Russia will wage war against other countries on the European continent. Accordingly, more attention needs to be paid to weapons production.
It should be noted that aid to Ukraine is being provided against the backdrop of internal political struggles within Italy itself. In 2025, 192 deputies voted in favor of helping our country, while 41 representatives voted against. Nevertheless, at this point, the Italian government will officially be able to support Ukraine and supply weapons until December 31st, 2025.
And different parties, let's say, sometimes take opposing positions. That is, when we talk about the political life of Italy, we can recall that there has been and still is an influential politician in Italy, Salvini, who, as is believed and for which there seems to be evidence, has ties to Russia. However, since the beginning of the full-scale war, Salvini has demonstratively provided assistance to Ukraine. In other words, he did not behave the way some clearly pro-Russian politicians in the European Union do.
According to experts, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni takes a rather tough stance.
Nevertheless, it is Meloni herself who is the author, at least publicly, of the proposal that if Russia is against Ukraine joining NATO, then let's not admit Ukraine to NATO, but simply extend NATO's Article 5 to cover it.
As of today, it is known that Italy is participating in the supply of Storm Shadow cruise missiles to Ukraine, together with the British and French governments. In addition, there have also been deliveries of Puma armored personnel carriers, which the government has never reported in the media or mentioned in official documents.
Nevertheless, I do not rule out that it is present, since after all, when the European Union talks about aid to Ukraine as a trend, then accordingly, Italy, as one of the leading countries of the European Union, cannot stand aside. Otherwise, it misses an important opportunity.
Moreover, Italy has gone further in supporting Ukrainians and is trying to minimize the purchase of Russian energy resources.
Back in 2022, there was a report that for the first time since 1976, Italy went a week without buying gas from Russia. This was, of course, a very significant step, and Italy took it.
Italy is not as steadfast in its informational support for Ukraine as it could be. However, its actions speak to the country's position better than any words could. Experts note that the Prime Minister of Italy also has good relations with US President Donald Trump, which allows her to facilitate communication between the United States and the European Union regarding aid to Ukraine.
The Ukrainian defense industry is accomplishing the impossible. Our engineers have shaken up the front with innovations. They've created a Ukrainian equivalent of the Chinese Mavics. And this is just the beginning. Production capacities are running at lightning speed. New drones and communication systems are appearing at the speed of light. Ukraine is forging victory with its own brains and super cool technologies. We'll tell you about the new developments that are striking the enemy and impressing our allies. This is something you have to see.
Reconnaissance, fire adjustment, and striking targets by dropping munitions. The Chinese Mavic drone is almost the main weapon of the Ukrainian Armed Forces in the war against the occupiers. And now, Ukrainian industry has started delivering domestically produced Mavic-type UAVs to the front lines.
A certain Mr. X invested, created a Ukrainian Mavic, and we'll see it soon. We've already delivered the first 1,000 to the battlefield.
Compared to the Chinese Mavic, the Ukrainian counterpart has a greater flight range and can carry a heavier payload. It is used not only for reconnaissance, but also for strike missions. The importance of Ukrainian drones appearing in this niche is hard to overestimate, since there are huge problems with the supply of Mavics to Ukraine.
DJI has banned sales to Ukraine, piously stating that its products are not intended for military purposes, so drones have to be purchased from third parties. The security issues are obvious. The Pentagon has banned any use of DJI drones, which send data back to the manufacturer. DJI has also added security features that make it impossible for the latest models to fly in geo-blocked zones, including Ukraine, without extensive hacking. Finally, sovereign drone production appears to be a key strategic capability for the future.
The Chinese Mavic drone's counterpart is called the Shmavic, but despite its ironic name, it has already been certified and boasts some serious features.
The Shmavic is positioned as a tactical reconnaissance drone designed to carry out operational tasks on the front lines, unlike the civilian Mavic, which is mainly used for aerial photography and videography. The Shmavic is built for combat conditions. It has a range of up to 15 kilometers, a flight time of up to 60 minutes, and is equipped with a reliable navigation system that is resistant to interference.
As early as last year, the government announced its interest in replacing Chinese drones. Now, manufacturers have already officially certified Ukrainian-made Mavics and have set up local production. As of today, it is simply not possible to completely replace the entire fleet of drones that are currently present and operating in Ukraine within a short period of time. Our weapons manufacturers already have developments and designs that meet the needs of our security and defense forces. Now it is necessary to scale up this production, minimize the number of foreign counterparts as much as possible, and switch to domestic models. There are already many Ukrainian analogs of the Mavic, including Yuka Porta, Yaitia, and the charming Shmavik. They are larger than DJI Mavic drones, equipped with long-range communication, interference resistance, and are more expensive. However, they may turn out to be more cost-effective due to their greater reliability.
For us, the key indicator is not the price per drone, but the cost of a single mission. While a typical Mavic performs about 60 missions per drone, our systems average around 300 missions per unit. With a comparable purchase price, the cost per mission is 5 times lower, which means that military units operating our drones receive a much greater overall economic benefit. Drone manufacturer.
Independent UAV production is a crucial element in modern warfare, and Ukraine knows this better than anyone, as both short-range UAVs and long-range strike drones have become key components of national defense.
The Balkans are on high alert. Military aid is already moving from Zagreb and Kosovo directly to Ukraine. Athens is preparing a powerful airstrike. Planes for Kyiv are also on their way. We will show what contribution the Balkan countries have already made and what they are preparing for our victory over the enemy.
Recently, Ukraine received a new substantial package of military aid from Croatia. Ukraine and Croatia have also agreed on joint weapons production. Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Denis Shmihal, and Croatia's Minister of Defense, Ivan Anušić, signed a joint letter of intent to deepen defense industrial cooperation. He thanked Croatia for providing 13 packages of military aid worth over 200 million euros. We expect the 14th aid package soon and the 15th by the end of this year. During the meeting, we also discussed joint participation in the SAVE mechanism and the possibility of including Croatia in the Pearl initiative. We are grateful for the consideration of this matter. Denis Shmihal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine. At the beginning of next year, the countries will hold a joint industrial forum for defense product manufacturers. Of course, Croatia is most interested in the production of various drones, which have already revolutionized modern warfare. The Croatian side will also assist Ukraine in the matter of demining territories. I noted Croatia's role in the work of the demining coalition. The experience of this friendly country is important for clearing our land. The Croatian company Docking has already delivered 69 demining machines and has started producing spare parts in Ukraine. Denis Shmihal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine. Greece will very soon supply Ukraine with American-made M110A2 howitzers, 150,000 units of ammunition, and Zudi missiles. This military aid, with a total value of about 199 million euros, will be delivered to Ukraine through the Czech Republic. Also, under pressure from other NATO countries, Greece may sell part of its Mirage 2000 fighter jets.
Greece has already purchased 24 more modern Rafale fighter jets from France. Not taking into account that technical support for the Mirage 2000 fighter jets will end in 2027, Greece is seeking to get rid of its old ones. However, negotiations with India regarding the sale of these fighter jets have reached a deadlock, and other Balkan countries have also found no interested buyers. Greece is negotiating with France to acquire another 6 to 12 Rafale fighter jets and is seeking a price reduction in exchange for selling part of its Mirage 2000 fleet.
Now Athens is negotiating with France to purchase another 6 to 12 Rafales and is arranging for a lower price in exchange for selling some of its Mirage 2000s to Ukraine. Greece currently has 25 of these aircraft in service. The United States is putting pressure on the country to purchase more weapon systems as part of the priority list program for Ukraine's needs. Therefore, it is only a matter of time before Kyiv buys some of the Mirage 2000s from Athens. Even the partially recognized Republic of Kosovo is helping Ukraine. Pristina has announced the delivery of a new package of military aid to Ukraine. The Balkan country is ready to help as much as it can. The details of the aid are not being disclosed. It is known that it includes mortar shells of various calibers, including 120mm, 60mm, and 81mm, as well as military trucks, armored vehicles, and tactical vehicles.
We are determined to support Ukraine in every way in accordance with our terms and capabilities. Ejup Makedonci, Minister of Defense of Kosovo.
The Minister of Defense of Kosovo posted a video on social media showing the Kosovo security forces and the British Army training Ukrainian soldiers.
Eastern European countries and the Balkans are actively assisting Ukraine with various types of weaponry and by conducting training sessions on their territory. Such support clearly demonstrates their attitude toward the Russian world and Putin. That's all for now. For more breaking news from the front, tune in to the next episode.